to it, you can actually fix it up and make it look spectacular. So I think I might do that coming up. Mute up. Welcome to Upper Pylon 2. Our mission is to provide you with an in-depth review of every episode of DS9 in the order they were broadcast. Tonight's episode is The Sword of Kahless, and this is Matt in Buffalo.
This is Chris in South Carolina.
This is Matt from Arizona, and you are cleared for docking. Happy 2017, everybody. That's right. We're recording this before the new year, but you guys will be hearing this after the new year. This will be the first episode of 2017, and so we hope you had a great time. You're not too hungover like a certain Klingon in this episode. And with that, we're going to go right into our review of The Sword of Kahless. The short synopsis tonight for this episode is Kor, Dax, and Worf go on a journey to find the Sword of Kahless in equal parts Indiana Jones and Treasure of the Sierra Madre. It's fantastic. This is the 9th episode of Season 4 and the 79th episode overall of Deep Space Nine. It first aired on November 20th, 1995. Teleplay by Hans Beimler, story by Richard Danis, and it was directed by LeVar Burton. Geordie. Our guest stars this week include John Colicos as Kor, Rick Pascalone as Toral, and Tom Morga as Soto. So Matt once again has the notes this week, so whenever you're ready, Matt, take us into The Sword of Kahless.
Teaser. Our episode begins with Kor, everybody remembers Kor, in Quarks regaling a large group with a fantastical emphasis on fantasy story of some battle, and people are enraptured, including several Starfleet members. Off drinking by himself is Worf. He is too ashamed and embarrassed to meet such a hero as Kor, but Dax forces his hand, and Kor and Worf become quick friends. Worf clearly has a lot of admiration and almost fatherly respect for Kor, and Kor senses this and immediately spills the beans that he is questing for the almost mythical Sword of Kahless. He has a Shroud of Turin level piece of evidence, and Dax calls it a night, vowing to look into the Shroud tomorrow and break for opening credits. Oh no, wait. The teaser is still going. Kor drunkenly stumbles back to his apartment, where he is met by a lousy dream warrior Lethian. And this is where I will now argue that this episode was a dream sequence the whole time, starting now. As we now break for opening credits.
At least they tell us at the beginning. They don't ruin the whole story. Not doing that at the end.
So, I'm half joking about that, but that is the same telepathic
that stupid alien from Distant Voices. Yeah.
Hey,
which they do say those attacks are usually lethal. I think the Klingon might have. This is all in the death throes.
Yeah,
the one flaw is he does come back later on. But
I was gonna say, why aren't we seeing his fever dream for this whole episode?
I will argue that this episode basically plays out like his fever dream. It's like one of their crazy, super exaggerated stories, where you have obviously it's not making him look good in this story, but you have the old, heroic, drunken warrior looking to reunite the people, the young upstart warrior who's looking to take his glory, and the warrior princess on a mythical quest, and they run into all these things, and it all turns out to be a parable in the end for hey, let's put our differences behind us, and just wraps up nicely at the end. It almost works as a dream sequence episode. Almost. I'm not going to really argue this, but I think it almost works.
I want you to continue with this narrative because it might help me see this episode in a new light.
That's an amazing pitch, Matt. Can you record that episode, please?
This is again where we have the, UP2 alternate episodes that we would much rather watch, right?
Yeah, because let me just put this up front, okay? I was okay, and I was pretty into this teaser because here you have, Kor's returning. I liked Kor back in Blood Oath. I think most of us did. And, here it's an original series Klingon meeting the, heretofore face of the Klingons from this 24th century era Trek. It's two icons meeting, and they're going to go on this epic quest, and Jadzia is going to come with them. Technically, for someone like me, all the pieces are in place for an episode that I would enjoy. So, here at this teaser, I'm not as disinterested as I will be later.
Oh, no, and they have really good things working for them. I think this episode does a great job on pulling upon all the history of the Klingon Empire and tons of different stories that we've had from all the Klingons storylines. You got the Emperor, you have Gowron, you have the eventual Duras people still linger around and come back. And then just the whole splintering of the people. It does a great job on drawing upon all the work previous episodes did. It kind of falls apart at a certain point, but there's a lot that's really admirable about this episode.
Yeah, I agree.
I love the open. I love Klingon lore.
Me too.
I'm a fan. So I'm with this so far. And we'll talk about my hangups in the middle, but I love this episode so far.
I think we all will. But I do have one kind of goofy point of possible discussion, if you guys are willing. During Kor's crazy battle speech or story, he's telling that, I was not put off, but I was surprised that of all the characters that they could have in there to just be digging the hell out of the story was Miles. Because I always kind of took Miles as like the old Greatest Generation, World War II type of veteran, where he's been through a lot of hard stuff, but he kind of bottles it up. I don't think he really wants to talk about these things so much. But for him to see another guy talking about some huge, glorious battle, exaggerating his deeds, I was kind of surprised that O'Brien would be won over by that. I would have thought he would think that's like a little icky.
But at the same time, I see where you're coming from, but at the same time, this is the man who, for fun, will go relax with Bashir at the Holosuite and do the Battle of Britain and the Battle of Thermopylae and all these the battle of all these famous losing battles, and he considers that fun. So
that's fair. But I kind of thought of that just as just like a separate video game with a friend kind of a thing. Granted, it's a lot more immersive as a holodeck, but I kind of look at that as like a little separate. I don't know if I should, but that's a very excellent point to argue against me.
Plus, O'Brien's usually the fun-loving type, and it's a bar story, and he strikes me as someone who can get on board with the bar story type.
Yeah, it's just that I could see Kira, because she hangs around with the old terrorist cell and tells those stories.
You could see Kira, like Kira, is very open to like talking about stuff with her resistance buddies, but I don't see her being like this like receptive audience to this very boastful, magnanimous Klingon.
I don't know. I could kind of see her digging that a little bit more than Miles. There's arguments obviously to be made for either, and it doesn't pull me out of the episode. It's just like, okay, I'll think about that. But yeah, I could see Kira, because she seems to be a little bit more open to tell those stories. With others, where Miles will open up and talk about, say, with the captain of the Phoenix there, like I could see him opening up to somebody who's been through that. But as an audience telling these stories, I can't quite see that as much. But he's not the one telling the story. But hey,
I do like Odo and Quark's commentary on the story, though.
Very much so. Love Quark in this one. There's too much death.
Yeah, I was like, you know what I like about Klingon stories? Nothing. There's too much death.
That said, there seemed to be an obvious punchline at the end. If they could end the episode back at Quark's, have Quark be ticked off that he couldn't get the sword to sell it, or have him have something like that at the end. I would have that punchline at the end rather than
the worst story of all.
Lesson. Yeah,
the death of Prophet.
All right. Act 1. We come back to Dax waking Kor and letting him know that the shroud is strongly suggestive of a true Kahless sword. And we get he got it from some Vulcans searching a planet in the Gamma Quadrant. And we get an info bomb in a meeting with Cisco where they try to borrow a runabout. They're always borrowing these runabouts. The Herc, Klingon for outsiders, and if you remember the Star Trek video game invasion, you'll know the Herc well.
Yes.
They invaded the Klingon homeworld hundreds of years ago and took the sword. And now they might know where it is. And our three heroes are off. And we get our first short clip. Let's talk about this one real briefly afterwards.
Mr. Worf, laying a course for the wormhole.
Course later.
Ahead, half.
Wait. Let this moment be remembered. For on this day we free Kur Dahar, master of the Klingons, Jadzia Dax, a joint trill of 7 lives, and Worf, son of Moog, and Thorn and Galran's side. Together, stepped forth into the eye of destiny.
No.
Now,
Ahead, half thrusters.
glorious.
Now, I picked that clip because I think that's kind of my favorite part of the episode. Because so often we're told that these Klingons should be almost, in my impression, like warrior poets, always talking about the songs and all this glory and going off to win all this respect to come home and tell people these great deeds. This is where I got a real taste of, yeah, that's what they're doing. They're setting that all up. And too often we don't see that kind of aspect of the Klingons. It's more the, you know, grr, glory, I'm going to hurt people, but you don't see what the potential beautiful aspect of why they have this culture and why it's been so persistent through their thousands of years. This is just a little hint of that, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think it's what DS9 does best with the Klingons as a whole, because I feel like TNG laid a lot of the groundwork for it, but I do think for the most part, even though some of those stories are very good, they have a lot of what you're describing there, Matt, with you know, it's a lot about honor and it's a lot about grumbling and fighting and all that stuff. Here, what I like about DS9 and what it does with all alien races, but you know, in this episode we happen to be focusing on the Klingons, is that they go much more into their back culture, that, you know, people like us who are hardcore into Star Trek have always wanted to learn more about these people. And I think they come off all the richer for it. They've certainly introduced a lot more, or they will be introducing a lot more three-dimensional Klingon characters than I think we've ever gotten, and you know, richer, fuller storylines. And I think that Klingons haven't gotten up to this point.
See, I would I would disagree with that point to some extent, just because I think that they've given Klingons a lot of time on TNG, and actually more than I thought they ever would. And I feel like this is an extension of that, of the care that they gave to the Klingon stories starting in, I think, season 4. Matt, you can correct me on that, 4 or 5, when they started the redemption stuff with Worf. I feel like they've built stronger, better Klingon characters from about middle of TNG, and this is just another extension of that, and I love every bit of it. And I think that, you know, it was a slow rollout, but it's been great, and the Klingons at this point are fantastic, and I do love their lore. And a lot of people give them short shrift, you know. I hear all the time that they're just one note and they're just silly and stupid, but I think that they've built this entire culture pretty well, in my estimation, for a TV show.
Well, I'm going to say it's up until kind of recently. I mean, in the point of where we're at in the show, it's often what we see from the Klingons from their homeworld side is like treacherous characters. And yeah, they're interesting in that, but I want to see how this culture can be self-sustaining, of how it persisted for so long. So you need to see more good, interesting, thoughtful characters other than Worf. Because even
yeah, sorry.
go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, no, you're good. Interrupt me.
I'm sorry, man. I hate to interrupt. But I would say the treachery we've seen is all in the politics, right? When you meet the old lady in the streets in that one episode in Redemption, she's not super treacherous, right? Like she's coming and laying the truth, and she's being honest and brave, and all these things. So like there are these characters underneath that don't maybe get as much time, but there are some of these characters kind of weaved in there. And Worf's brother, not very treacherous, just kind of a tough guy trying to make his way, you know. So I don't know. They're not the main ones, but yeah.
I know, but in Deep Space Nine now, we get a bunch of main ones. These three guys in the first episode where we get the three Klingons back, and none of them are treacherous. They're all very honorable. You see them actually, okay, these are real people. I can start to understand how this culture can exist and not just be, let's fight each other kind of stuff. Because that is like often the one note people say. And then this is where I'm arguing that this is kind of where we get that continuing little taste of, yes, they do have a beautiful aspect to their culture too.
Right. And I think
I'm just wanting more of that.
Yeah. And it's all going to culminate, at least in my opinion, with Martok, which is like probably my favorite Klingon. Sorry, Worf, but I think I like Martok more.
I still love Worf the most, but Martok is great.
Well, I have a line that kind of sums up my opinion on Worf coming up, but let's round out this clip, or this act. So we come back with Kor waking from a dream and working what I guess is mouthwash around in his mouth, just like any good alcoholic. And he relays a dream about their impending glory. They find the planet with the ruins and what might be the resting place and home of the Sword. Anything there, or should I push through into Act 2?
We're kind of just like climbing through the typical planet hell scenes sets in here, so we might as well just push on to Act 2.
Act 2. They beam down, and like any good historical questing video game, there are some light puzzles to solve before they can get to their prize. No clip here, but they find the sword. And if I did clip it, we'd insert a little bit of a sound effect from Legend of Zelda Triforce or the upgrade sound effects.
See, I thought you would have like, and you probably would have called it like a Jadzia Dax Tomb Raider.
Yeah, I mean Tomb Raider, the Uncharted series. Yeah, I mean
we could only be so lucky as to see Jadzia Dax in Tomb Raider costume. We could only be that lucky. Sorry, clip that out. Cut that out. That doesn't need to be in the bucket.
Yeah, that guarantees it's going to be in there. But as they try to leave with a sword, one of those dastardly Duras kids is there, looking to steal the sword. Kor gets very talkative when he's drunk, you see, and they're here to exploit that weakness. Dax, Worf, and Kor telegraph an attack incredibly obviously that they're going to use the sword to get out of there.
But fortunately for them, Toral is even dumber than they are, so...
And those good, lousy Klingons fall for it. Worf gets stabbed in the Donnybrook, but it's no big deal. But they can't get out because of some jamming. So they head off through the caves to try and evade the Klingons and get to the surface. And in our next clip, we get a taste of the troubles to come.
Why did Toral say that you had spared his life?
When it was discovered that the House of Duras had conspired to destroy my father's honor, Gowron offered me Toral's life.
Under the right of vengeance.
I declined.
Why?
He was a boy. He had done nothing.
That's beside the point. It was a matter of honor.
It was Worf's right to decline.
It was a mistake. Perhaps what they say about you is true. You've been around humans too long.
Kor.
If he hadn't spared Toral's life, we'd be on the way to Kronos.
And if you had not been drunk and told a tavern full of people what you were planning, Toral would not have followed us here in the first place.
I told him nothing of consequence. How could I know that Toral was going to send a Lethian to steal my thoughts?
You should have been more discreet.
And you should have been more of a Klingon.
Kor, what was that all about? Worf admires you. You have no idea how much it meant for him to be invited on this journey.
Tell me, Dax, how well do you know him?
Well enough. Why?
I'm beginning to think I was too lenient in my judgment of him. Any Klingon who denies himself the right of vengeance is no Klingon at all. He dishonors the sword with his presence. I don't trust him. I should have let him stay on that space station where he belongs.
Commercial break. So this is where I think the episode starts to fall off steeply
Yes.
off a cliff.
Yes. Well, first of all, let's talk about the Toral showing up, because that's supposed to be a continuation of what we saw in Redemption. Here's the thing. I liked Duras, and I thought that the Duras sisters were really, really interesting. You know who the least interesting member of the Duras family was to
Toral.
me? Toral. So,
Rightfully so.
and,
Yeah.
because he was just a whiny little brat in that episode, and here he's not that different as an adult. Yeah, I mean, I guess aside from the namesake and the hatred for the family, why is he here?
It's a tie a ribbon on that storyline and end it. I mean,
How did he get there? That's my question.
well, I mean, they do explain it in that it's luck.
Right.
That he listened to Cord drinking in a bar and telling stories, and somehow this character got connected to it.
But are we to believe that people can just roll through because they went through the wormhole here, right?
Yeah. Oh, this is again the part of the story where it's like, oh, so the Gamma Quadrant's wide open again. There's
Right.
no
You could just
TV
let
over here.
any Klingon can just roll through the Gamma Quadrant, like no big deal.
Right. Even though they're supposedly in a Cold War with the Federation right now.
Right.
Yeah. So him showing up in this episode, other than a cute little tie-in, added nothing for me, especially since he's not even that interesting. I would have preferred the whiny brat. Here he's almost nothing.
All right, here we go. Headcanon. Time coming in. In an effort to restart the Klingons' expansionism and destabilizing of the Alpha Quadrant, the Dominion found the sword, whispered in the Duras brat's ear to get it, to take back over, destabilize, put the Klingons into expansionism mode, restart wars, blah, blah, blah. Thank you. Good night.
That's fine. That would be interesting if they had played that up.
That'd be cool if I really cared about Toral, but like I said, he's probably the least interesting of all the Duras people.
They could have solved this easily too if they would have just, instead of having this guy come in, they don't have to tie a bow on the Duras anything. We don't need the Duras people. We have Core already. We're good, right? We have our tie-in to old Star Trek. Why not just have these be super old, super powerful, like Klingon guards that were set there to guard this relic?
Or just don't have any obstacles at all. Let the obstacle be what the sword ends up doing to them. Which, I say that, but then I don't know. I don't know how you guys feel about it, but this whole animosity thing that's going to take up the next 2 acts of the story, basically until the climax, for me gets really old really fast. And I get really tired of hearing them sniping against each other. And I feel like much of the way Dax reacts in this episode is how I'm reacting in this episode, because it's just tedious.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to just like nuts and bolts it, they needed some pressure on these guys to start them going crazy and force them through these ordeals. And while we're doing that, let's just get the Duras story wrapped up. It's boring though.
Story-wise,
that's why you do it, but it's boring.
And it feels so artificial too. Like, I mean, like this whole thing is stemming from, this storyline at the end of Redemption where he doesn't kill Toral. And I'm like, out of all the things, why would that be such a sticking point? I mean, I would rather have it be something like, if the sword is affecting them, have Core like revert back to his old ways of thinking. Have him hate Worf because he's in the Federation and he's never liked the Federation. I mean, we know that from Errand of Mercy. Have him go back to that core. I mean, you know what I mean? It's just do it in a more interesting way.
Well, that's why I ended up picking that clip that we really didn't talk directly about. Is like I kind of took that as the right level of argumentative. between them and kind of the right reasons. And once it starts going past that level, it kind of enters into a little bit cartoonish, kind of very much over the top stuff. But to keep it much more grounded in like the Starfleet stuff, you're weak because you're human. That would have been kind of interesting. And we get touches of that, but that's not the direction they really went with it. So it's, yeah, I mean, yeah. I faded off on that one.
I don't know. Well, you have to, because I mean, like, this is going to be, you know, I haven't read through your notes, but I remember the episode. This is pretty much the dramatic linchpinning of the next 2 acts, and it like I'm tired of it by this commercial break that we come back from.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the point where there's other parts where they're fighting, but it's just shouty. I had to pick that clip because it shows, yeah, this is what the story's going to be now, but this is where it's like at a most tolerable kind of level.
Yeah, it's going to get a lot more catty from here on out, and then the you know, we haven't gotten to it yet, but it reaches its peak level of annoyance with the whole ledge falling off the ledge thing.
Yeah. Well, you know, back to, I think Chris was making the point, how about some old Klingon warriors in there? How about a couple automated Herc things?
Some orcs, a cave troll, you know, anything.
Yeah.
If this is going to be, if we're going to go Lord of the Rings, let's really go Lord of the Rings and make it an homage. We're going to have an homage episode next week. So,
and that's kind of what I was going to say earlier is storyline wise, the reason that Lord of the Rings works so well in Two Towers is because you split and you jump between. You're not focused solely on Sam and Frodo and Gollum. You have some break from that because it is a little bit grating, you know, and you have a break from it to go do some harrowing adventure or to have fun with Merry and Pippin or to see what they're doing, you know, with the wood, with the trees or whatever, you know, like you have these breaks from the whole thing, and there's no break in this episode. The only break is the commercial break, and it's not long enough on Netflix. And it's a black screen, and then I'm right back to them being at each other, and it's just
Well, they have to do that because, like, I wonder, you know, I guess they had to because they needed the sword to escalate the conflict. But I wonder if it was almost kind of a mistake that they find it so quickly, like that they're barely on this quest. They go through a couple of puzzles and then they find it. I
think they already believe. Well, I can see that. I can see that episode that the puzzles are longer, that it's more of a quest to get it. Yes.
And then I feel like the tension would have been more heartfelt because here we're on this, you know, he could have, you know, the tension could have been like Worf, like starting to believe, oh, you stupid old man, you set us on this quest and we're not, you know, we've wasted all this time and we still haven't freaking found the thing. You know, then you would have believed that they were getting at each other's throats because here we're going through all this rigmarole and we still haven't found the damn thing.
Yeah, like a slow build up through the process of finding it. And then once they do find it, one big kind of blow up where it's not necessarily over the top. And then they just kind of realize, oh, what the hell did we just do? And then I think that would be a lot more tolerable than 2.5 acts of them doing this.
And you have a built-in timer that you could put. You have a built-in timer you could put on that whole thing with them being in the Gamma Quadrant. You choose that place for a reason. I feel like this place was chosen for no good reason. Why did the Klingons thing have to be in the Gamma Quadrant? I don't know. Who knows? They could have had a good reason for it. The Dominion is coming to this planet, and if we don't get the thing by this time, the Dominion will be here, and we're going to die. Right? So they have a built-in timer. Like everything would have been more suspenseful. I don't know. We're rewriting the episode, and that could be boring, I'm sure, for people, but I wish that there was more motivation for them to get at each other, that it wasn't so thin and light. And yeah.
Well, I mean, it may be boring to some listeners, but I mean, Matt, we can go into the next acts that you have written, but I don't have a whole lot to say other than just like, you know, shut the hell up, both of you.
Yes. Ugh.
Yeah, I mean, it's that clip is the rest of the episode, but on steroids, basically. So Act 3, we come back to them hunting cave rats. And while eating some terrible food, we get some more distrust regarding the sword. Worf thinks Kor is disrespecting the sword. Kor basically calls Worf for being a Klingon impersonator. Think about that. I think that's a pretty apt description of Klingon. He's actually a Klingon, but he's acting how he thinks all Klingons should act. Over the top, very cartoonish. and they fight. Kor doesn't respect the cloned emperor, Worf clearly does, and nobody respects poor Gowron. It's becoming increasingly clear that Kor thinks he, and not many others, are worthy of the sword. Worf wants to know if he intends to take the sword for himself. I think that's painfully obvious, but he does ask if he's going to take it and try to lead the Empire. Kor doesn't directly answer, and we end the act of war getting nuttier than squirrel poop in our next clip. And we get some background stuff on him.
He never answered my question about his plans for the sword.
I noticed.
He is a hero to many. He brings it back with him to Kronos and decides to seize power. Many will follow him.
But you wouldn't.
He is not all I thought he was.
Not. Sorry. But I've known him a long time. And his heart's in the right place.
He drinks too much. He exaggerates his feats. He blames others for his own mistakes. But he could be right about one thing. The Emperor may be too weak to stand against Gowron, even with the sword.
I thought you believed in the Emperor.
I do not know what I believe anymore. All I know is when Kor asked me to help him find the sword, I knew we would succeed. I knew we would find it.
Can't say I felt the same way.
I had no doubt. I felt as if my life was finally coming into focus.
What do you mean?
For as long as I can remember, I have always been an outsider. I was raised by humans, but I was too Klingon to be one of them. I did not belong. I begged my foster parents to allow me to visit the Klingon home world. They arranged for me to stay with my cousin's family. When I first set eyes on the great domes of Kronos, I felt that I had finally come home. But my own cousins wanted nothing to do with me.
You were too human to be one of them.
I ran away into the mountains. I was without food or water for 3 days. But there, in the caves of Nomad, Kahless appeared to me in a vision and told me I would do something no other Klingon had ever done. After I returned to Earth, I pondered the meaning of his words and wondered what lay ahead for me. When I was old enough, I joined Starfleet.
Something no Klingon had ever done.
For a time, I thought that I had fulfilled my destiny. But now I see Kahless had something else in mind for me. Something greater. That is why I had to endure so much pain. Why I was forced to choose between the Federation and my own people. I was being tested. Prepared for some greater purpose.
Like finding the sword.
More than that. When I held the sword in my hand, I felt the spirit of Kahless himself had guided me to it. Don't you see? He wants me to have it. He wants me to lead his people.
You sound like Kor.
Kor is an old man. His greatest days are behind him. Mine are still ahead.
And we have a bit of a problem. There's only one sword and we both want it.
Worf gets some world-class crazy eyes during that clip, by the way, if you notice.
And again, I mean, like, I feel like that speech, I should be more captivated by it than I am, but I just, like, and the music there at the end, it's like they tried to, they were acting like they were revealing something that I didn't already know. I already knew that they both wanted the sword. It was obvious from the way that they've been bitching at each other for the last 10 minutes of this episode. So, I mean, it just doesn't do much for me at this point. Does it do anything for you guys?
No, I mean, we didn't hear that specific story through Next Gen, but it's basically kind of serving the point we've made so often, that this is reintroducing the audience to some elements, including Worf. So we didn't know it specifically, but we knew that kind of story with him. He always felt like the outcast. His own people always call him the outcast, and it's just kind of another story telling us something that we kind of already knew. So, it's not, I didn't necessarily mind it, but it's not helped by that we knew all this before.
Right. That's the thing is that for me the scene is they're playing it like it's some kind of revelation, but nothing is really revealed here, at least not to us hardcores, I don't think.
And I think we're starting to drift into the territory of this is out of Worf's character.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, yeah, I get that he would want it, but I don't quite see him losing it this badly.
And not to the point where like he would want to seize power for himself. He never wanted to be a leader. Like that was never in his, like he likes being in the thick of things and fighting his own battles, but like he's never sought the chancellorship, and
Yeah, we see him turn it down, don't we?
Yeah,
Right, at a certain
he
point.
definitely didn't want it.
So I mean, it's just weird, and it's not playing for me.
No, it's like I can totally see him wanting to stop Core,
Right.
I suppose, but for it being, I'm taking it myself, bridge too far.
Yeah,
Not
but
quite buying it.
Not buying it, and it's a shame because, like I said at the top of this episode, all the pieces are here for an episode that I like. Klingons, Worf and Dax together, epic quest, journey, like this should work, but
Yeah, and that's a statement to the ultimate quality of the show. I mean, it's very rare now, it seems like, where we say they completely missed the mark. This was bad from the moment go. They at least have an outline of something good. It's whether they can pull off something that sustains an hour episode or not. It's the question.
yeah,
And this is one where they just don't. It sustains 2 acts or so, and then it comes flying off the rails.
Yeah, so like I think we hit that 20-minute mark into the episode of the 46 minutes of the episode, and I just like I'm no longer as held by it. I mean, I come back at the very, very end, but I feel like then it's a little bit late to really save this episode from just kind of like the middle of the road mediocrity, I think it is. But
yeah, they have 30 minutes of decent material and then a bunch of hand-wringing and melodramatics, and I feel like all this episode needs to really make it good, because I love the intro. I kind of like the ending where they end up. All they need is a good, simple B story back on the station, or even just something with Quark kind of dealing with Klingon culture, or any number of things that could add some levity in between for just a couple minutes.
A pressure relief valve,
something,
basically.
yeah.
Or like I said, have him not find the sword 15 minutes into the episode.
Or that.
Like have it be about the struggle to get there, because really part of the reason I'm not feeling the tension and why I feel like they have to insert this conflict between Core and Worf is that we have the object, now we're just simply trying to get back, and that's not very cool on itself, so you have to do something with it, and so they insert this this half-hearted conflict into it, and it's not hitting the mark for me. And if they had saved the sword for like, we don't find it until a half hour into it, where there's only about 15 minutes of the episode left, then that could have been like we start the climax and the falling action. But there really is no real climax here, is there? I mean, like,
well, there's the fight. I think the climax would be the end fight that's never in question, which is why it doesn't feel like a climax.
Right. I mean, there could have been a different angle entirely of like, okay, we're getting chased by these Klingons. We're 2 Klingons. Why don't we turn back and fight and have
my buddy said the same exact thing who I watched this episode with. He was like, why did we just watch all this?
Right. So
do that at the beginning?
Could that be a sense of conflict? Core wants to press the fight back, and Worf is like, come on, let's get out of here. We have the prize. And he calls him a coward in Starfleet. What are you 2, human, to press the fight back? We're warriors. That would seem like a little bit more of an organic fight given the histories that we know, rather than the ring, my precious.
Right.
I don't know. It seems like they could have more organically, rather than, magic.
The magic object is making them crazy.
Right. So, Act 4. Again, like any good Indiana Jones reference show, we need an improbable cliff scene. Core tumbles off, and he's being held up by the sword by Worf and Dax. And there is plenty of distrust when Worf holds him up, claiming that there is a ledge just below that could save him. He should just drop. And, we had a lot of debate about this supposed ledge. But eventually he is pulled up, and they pull knives willing to fight over the sword. I mean, at this point, we're all wondering this sword must be pumping out some crazy waves right into the dumb Klingon brains, right? No,
Yeah.
no, none of that. No, it's just them, you know.
Yeah, but you know what? I'm glad you called out Indiana Jones, because I'm just going to say I don't know how they would have fitted into this episode, but if they could have stuck Worf, Dax, and Core into a cart in a mine somewhere in this cave and had some kind of chase with Toral, that would have gotten an extra star out of me. Or like if they get to the sword room at the end at the same time Toral does, and there's 3 swords, and by touching one of the swords, Toral turns into dust, and Worf has some line where he chose poorly.
No, better. At the beginning, Worf is at the bar, and Quark comes up and offers him all these wonderful, expensive, different boozes. And Worf just goes, "I'll have prune juice." And Quark just has to say, "Oh, you chose poorly." And then there you go. It hits you with the reference before the episode hits you over the head with the rest of it. That's the way to go. Anyhow, Dax intervenes and offers to be the ring bearer. Neither of the 2 Klingons can be trusted at this point, and they settle in for the night. And Core and Worf don't want each other standing watch, so they both end up doing that. But I can't blame Worf here. Core is incredibly transparently creepy here, just staring at you going, "Hey, go to bed. It's all right. Go to sleep." Nobody's going to fall asleep when you're doing that to him. So, you know, I can sympathize with Worf on this at this point.
But good thing we have Jadzia Baggins here to save the day.
Jadzia is the only character that I can pretty much stand throughout this whole episode, and I'm not just saying that as a fan, because she's expressing as much frustration as I think we're all feeling.
Dax lives, everyone. Dax lives. Act 5. I'm just taking us home. After a few winks, we come back to Worf, going truly over the top bonkers now. And they lock blades, just as the other Klingons catch up. Core uses the sword to kill them in glorious blah, blah, blah. Eventually, it ends up back with Worf, and they take care of the rest of the chumps. And Worf and Core start to barroom brawl. Dax phasers Worf. Dax phasers Core. She's about as sick of this fighting as I am, as we all are.
Can I just say, like, you're right. The best part, the nicest part of this episode is that speech at the beginning. This is my favorite part of this episode, though, because Dax does what I've been wanting to do for the last 10 minutes.
When she phasers Worf, I'm just like, oh, no.
And not only that, but not only that with Core just being over the top and bragging, she's shut up and be quiet or something like that.
Yes, it's great.
And then she knocks out the solution to the jamming from some last chump Klingon surviving. And as easily as a rift formed between Core and Worf, they end it. They agree to beam the One Ring, aka the Ring of Power,
into the Mount of Doom.
Isildur's Bane, if you will, into space, because nobody's ready for it now. It'll just float around until destiny allows it to come back. And sometime later, Core awakes to Dax, informing him that the shroud was just some lousy fake he got conned into taking. As we break the commercial. As we break the end credits. Yes,
yeah, this is over.
So wait, we've had it wrong the whole time. These aren't the Fellowship. This is like this is Gollum's story, right? Where Gollum drops it in the river or whatever. And then it gets picked up, or whoever before Gollum drops it in the river. Anyway, sorry.
There's some Faramir here. It's all of them. It's all of them. Oh no, sorry, Boromir. There's Boromir. Yeah.
Well, does anyone strike it as weird? Like, this thing is just going to float throughout the Gamma Quadrant forever
until the
Dominion picks it up.
Dominion picks it up, and like you see Dominion Kahless come out.
Or Core just memorizes what coordinates they were in and comes back with a ship and gets it
that would
5 days later. You know.
I mean, that would be great if we didn't know that, in a couple of years we're going to see him with Klingon Alzheimer's.
Well, maybe he did get the sword, just forgot about it. Oh, I'm sorry.
It's somewhere in Morn's lockbox out on Primera 4 or whatever.
Morn, a sword swallower. He swallowed this as well.
All right. Does that do we have anything else to say about this episode, or should we go right into final thoughts?
Oh, I am done.
Okay,
And
Chris.
done.
Okay, so we're gonna move into final thoughts and ratings. Chris, you go first. What are your final thoughts about the Sword of Kahless and your rating out of 5?
In my opinion, and I stated this clearly within the episode, this is a boring Klingon world-building episode that should have been squeezed into a 30-minute episode with a rousing B-plot to give us something to break up the thinness of this plot. With that said, I still love Klingon world-building. I enjoy them bringing back Core. I love this episode for what it is, and I'll go back and watch it again and again at about 1.5 times speed. This is worth about 4 out of 4 incorrigible Klingon klaxons kicking slack cordons of kin cumbersomely. The end. Let's get out of this episode, please.
4 out of 5.
Yeah, I was gonna say, is it 4 out of 4? Like, so this is perfect?
I mean, there's changes here, but we're not changing our scale.
Sorry, guys. 4 out of 5. I've been drinking a lot today.
Matt, do you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. I should point out, in a rare occurrence, we actually got a score in before the recording from a missing host. Blair gives this 2 stars. And it's harsh, but I am tempted to kind of side with Blair. We've raised expectations in this season, and we've had a really good average to above average streak. But this episode, I think, is just flawed in too many ways where it becomes kind of a slog at a certain point. And you really don't want that to be your episode where you're like counting the acts left. And this is certainly one instance where I was doing that. Wow, do I have a loud cat right behind me, I think. That's Miles, everybody. Miles gives it a 2, and so do I. Now I'm going to go shut him up.
Well, I'm glad both of you chimed in there. As far as I'm concerned, I'm tempted to agree with you. This is not one of my favorite episodes. It's certainly one of the least impactful Klingon stories that we've had so far in this series, if not the least impactful. Like I said, all the pieces are here. What's so frustrating to me about this episode is that everything here is built for me to like it. Like I said, Core coming back. I loved him in Blood Oath. Dax and Worf together. I love that pairing. An epic journey to find this artifact. You know, the sense of adventure is something that would be celebrated in Klingon song. All this stuff, Klingon world building. I love all this stuff. And the biggest disappointment for me out of this whole episode is that they managed to take all this stuff, and because of how they execute it, they turn what should be a great fun story into kind of a meh story, and that's sad. For me, it's kind of a shame, and it turns into an episode that, while there are some things that I really like about it, it's barely par. It's even subpar. So, but I'm going to be a little bit nicer than you and Blair, Matt, and just say that it's a 2.5. But it's like just the definition of mediocre. It's okay. I've seen this episode more than once, so it's not unbearable to watch like certain episodes of the show. But I mean, it takes a great premise and just completely flushes it halfway through, and it's a shame. So
yeah, it's one of those sneaky bad episodes where you can kind of like look back on this and think, oh, that's not that bad, but then you kind of go back and it's like, ooh, actually, with a little bit of a critical eye, this is a little bit of a stinker in some ways.
Yeah, this doesn't hold up. But I'm fortunately, this is not the last time we'll see Core, and from my memory serves, the last episode that he's in is much, much better and a much better send-off than this would have been. So that pretty much wraps it up for our discussion on the Sword of Kahless. Do you guys know if we're doing feedback tonight, and if so, which section we're doing it on? Matt? No, we're not doing it. Okay, so that pretty much wraps it up for our discussion on the Sword of Kahless this week. We hope you were at least entertained by the discussion, if not the episode. And let us know what you thought of not only this episode, but the show as a whole. You can contact us in many different ways. You can email us at up2podcast@gmail.com. Leave a comment in our forums at forum.trekmatefamily.com. Follow the podcast itself on Twitter at UP2podcast. Like us on Facebook at facebook.com Upper Pylon 2 and leaving us 5-star iTunes reviews. They really do help out the show and get the word out about the fact that we exist. And we're here in season 4, and hopefully we're on to bigger and better things next week. And you can reach all of us personally on Twitter as well. I am at mhansen0207, HANSEN, talking about all things nerdy, Star Trek, Star Wars with Rogue One, Marvel, anything that you want to talk about, I'm there.
I can be found at Pro Sub-Zero, and I'm really into old vintage science fiction paperbacks at the moment, 50s, 60s. Hey, if you like that same stuff, let's talk.
And we always talk about ourselves in this section, but I just want to point out that I only get on Twitter at this point to really follow certain people. And one of those people is at Becky Black Books. So you should follow her instead of me.
But if you want to follow Chris, though, he's at Carnivore J.
You're better off with Becky.
Yeah, in all honesty. But aside from that, thank you guys for joining us this week. I, for one, am very much looking forward to next week. Kind of like my wheelhouse in homages. So I'm very, very excited for when we talk about our man Bashir next week.
Bond. Oh, this is where I come in and do the thing, right? Oh, okay. Voiceless it cries, wingless it flutters, toothless it bites, mouthless it mutters. This is Chris in South Carolina.
I'm Matt in Buffalo, and I know what gold does to a man's soul.
And this is Matt from Arizona, closing hailing frequencies. Docking clamps are open, and you are cleared for departure.